Hi there and welcome to Real Talk in ELT, a podcast about the reality of teaching English. I'm your host, Kelly Pennington. Thank you for joining me today.
So welcome everyone. Welcome specifically Leandro. I'm very excited to have you here today. And let me tell everyone who Leandro is, and I'm going to butcher your last name. Leandro Zuanazzi?
There you go.
Yes!
Okay. Perfect.
Leandro Zuanazzi is a freelance teacher. He holds a degree in languages, the Cambridge C2 Proficiency, CPE. I think it's not called CPE anymore, right?
No, it isn't.
But did you do it when it was the CPE?
Oh yeah, I did. but still, many people still refer to it as the CPE. So that's why I usually mention it, because people still call them by their older names, FC, CAE. Yeah.
Right. Sorry. Okay. And the Delta certificate, the CELTA certificate.
Yeah, not yet.
Yes, not yet. He's almost there. Well, yeah. He is passionate about professional development and has a special interest in exam preparation.
Yes. And writing skills.
Thank you. And writing, which we're going to get into.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here. I'm excited.
I know. We get to chat once more. So why writing?
Yes. Yeah, let's start from the beginning. I guess I've always been sort of interested in writing as a skill in general. Always struggled a little bit with it, as most people do. But I think the moment when I decided to actually dive deeper into it and kind of study more and focus and try to understand how I could not only help myself to become a better writer, develop my own writing skills, but especially help my students develop their writing skills, was perhaps after passing the C2 proficiency, the Cambridge exam. I thought I was okay. I was rather good at writing, didn't have major problems with it, but I was disappointed with the score I got. And it's not because I'm a perfectionist or nothing like that, because it was really low. And then I was like, interesting. Why might that be? And then
can I ask, were the other scores okay though? Were you happy with your other scores?
Yes, I was.
Okay, so it was just the writing one that was
the writing one. Yeah, that caught my attention because it was considerably lower than the other ones.
Okay, interesting.
And then I was like, why? And then I realized I was maybe not doing something that they expected me to do or something like this. And then I decided to start studying more. And I also had a hard time in class with my students. Whenever there was a writing class, I would simply reproduce the models I had when I was a student, in their shoes. So there would be a model text for us to analyze, and then the teacher would assign the writing task as homework. Off we went, and then we would turn in the text the following week, and then we would get corrections, red pen, and that was that. Nobody talked about it anymore.
That's pretty standard though, right? That's that is the writing process for most people. And it's quite unfortunate, because I think that it's not super motivating. So actually, I've got two questions based on what you just said, and they come from some people who had submitted questions online. So we can kind of do one, then do the other. The first one is writing for C2. That was that was the whole question. Writing for C2. Yeah. And the other one is, how can I encourage students to write more? Because I think this kind of what you were talking about with your experience with the CPE, but also what we usually see in the classroom is okay, here's the model, good luck. And that's not very encouraging for a lot of people. Yeah. So either one, but we'll try and tackle both of those.
Right. I guess we can start with writing for C2. I guess if we're talking about the exam specifically, then if you're someone who's preparing to sit the exam, you must become familiar with the assessment criteria. you should ideally have someone to guide you, a tutor who will give you feedback based on the assessment criteria, and read lots of sample answers with examiners' comments. They are available on the Cambridge English website.
The feedback does help too, right? Seeing that feedback there to see what they're looking for and what they didn't find to be up to par, I guess we could say.
Exactly. Because sometimes if you only look at the descriptors of the assessment scales, you'll feel a little bit confused with the terms like flexibility, appropriately, or a wide range of. What do they mean by that exactly? And then when you actually read the samples and read the comments, you kind of start understanding, this is what they mean.
Because it's slightly vague. You know, they leave it broad enough for interpretation, but it is a little vague for people who are getting into it. Okay.
Yeah, it is. So I'd say that to start off. So then get familiar with the assessment criteria, try and read the sample answers with examiners' comments. And if you can, ideally get a tutor who will help you out, give you feedback, and also get used to the writing process, and don't simply write one essay, for example, turn it in, receive feedback, and be done with it. Try to revisit and write a second version, and so on.
Yeah. Speaking of that, I mean, obviously I can recommend some tutors. There's this really great duo, Leandro and Gabi, that have fantastic writing courses. A little plug for you guys, yes. But you guys do. You offer these wonderful writing courses, and you and Gabi have been working together and been working with writing for a really long time. But for people who can't necessarily invest right now because maybe their exam is a little bit further off, are there books that would be useful as a self-study to do in preparation to taking a preparatory course and then for getting ready for the exam?
Absolutely. Whenever people ask me for book recommendations, I usually preface the answer with an idea. I usually tell them, start with what you have first, you know, and
That's
when it
good.
comes to writing,
save some money.
yeah. And when it comes to writing and any other skill like this, like speaking, for instance, you need to practice. There's no shortcut. There's no other way around it, right? There's only, you know, you can read a bunch of books on writing. You can read a bunch of sample answers with examiners' comments and all that. You can memorize the whole assessment criteria, the descriptors and all that. But still, if you don't actually sit down and write, make words appear on the screen or on a piece of paper, you won't be able to identify your strengths and weaknesses, and because you can kind of figure out where you struggle, if it's maybe generating ideas, if it's planning, creating an outline, for instance, time management. I find that most people tend to focus way too much on language, to the detriment of other aspects like organization, the content of the writing task itself as well, and other features of each particular genre, right? So people obsess over language, and they want to include as much
fancy phrases, right?
Exactly. Inversions and advanced conditional sentences and very specific words and adjectives and so on. And that's great, but that's only, I always say, that's only 25% of the whole score, right? Because it's there are 4 assessment criteria. Language is only one, and under language, you have grammar and vocabulary. So everything is there. You have content, you have communicative achievement, and you have organization to focus on as well, you know? And it's arguably much easier for you to get those right, you know, with relatively ease,
yeah.
than language, you know?
Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
Because you're bound to make some mistakes because you'll be nervous on the day of the exam, right?
Of course, you're right. Well, but it's interesting to try and maybe focus not less, but not be hyper focused on the language that you're using and trying to use all those fancy phrases and sounding. I had a student once, he tried to sound much smarter, and I was like, just do the task. Don't worry about their impression of you and whether or not you have, high intellect. Just do the task and get the task done. So that does resonate with me and some of my past experiences. So for people who aren't prepping for the C2 and writing for the C2, one of the teachers had sent in, how can I encourage students to write more?
Yeah.
Because it isn't, well, I would have to say that it's not a sexy skill. Speaking is the sexy skill, right? So
yeah. Yeah.
So how can we get students to get more excited about writing?
I think, first of all, maybe we should work on our attitude towards writing, as teachers first, because we tend to have this negative attitude towards it as well. Maybe because of our past experiences, maybe because we don't actually practice much. Maybe it's because we don't like spending the time giving feedback because it is such a time-consuming task, right? So maybe you kind of neglect it because you don't want to add to your pile of work already, which is true.
That
right?
might be.
Yeah, let's be honest. So then perhaps after that, we can then help the students become familiar with the process and let them become accustomed with the fact that it is a process. It isn't something that you are expected to sit down, spend 20 minutes on, turn it in, expect some feedback, correction on language only, and that's all, right? But it can be such a collaborative process inside the classroom, outside the classroom. If we help students to generate ideas together in pairs, in small groups, you can integrate lots of skills as well. And this can, then you have a group of lessons in sequence. Maybe you have, for example, a reading lesson first based on the topic that you're going to work on. This will help students to learn about the topic, because this is something that they complain a lot about. Oh, I don't know much about this. I don't have much information. How can I have ideas or arguments to include here, right? So maybe giving them this sort of scaffolding to help them have those ideas, then they can discuss. You can organize some sort of debate, for instance, even some group discussions, and then maybe you can move on to the writing task itself, and then they can organize, and you can do this in a way that will help those students who prefer, moving things around, let's say more kinesthetic students. You can write on slips of paper, stick them to the wall, on the table, on the floor, whatever works for the classroom. Online, we can use tools like Jamboard, and they can write their ideas and organize, think about the way they want to present those ideas. Then they can think about the language, and it may be language that they already know. For example, language to ask for information, language to complain, language to give advice, all these things that they usually work on in a general English course, right? They can then think about, plan, and then once they actually sit down to write their first draft, they will feel prepared because they will have the ideas, they will know how to start, how to end the text, and they will also have the language. So it really is a process. It is time consuming, but it's so rewarding when you're able to read a text and see that the student has applied everything they have discussed with their peers. Yeah,
I think a couple of things popped into my mind while you were discussing that. I think that sometimes we focus or hyper focus on one type of text. Like we always want them to write an essay, and that's not necessarily true. I mean, there's so many types of text that we can have. I've had a whole class where literally it was silence in the class and everybody was in the chat box. Instant messaging back and forth. That's writing. And so if we get creative with some of these ideas, writing comments on blog posts, responding to social media, the Instagram posts, whatever, doing those types of things, this is still writing. And if your students are very opposed to writing, then it's something that we can introduce, and it's smaller text. And then you can gradually get bigger and bigger, but not always focusing on those big, long essays, because that can be very daunting in the beginning, especially if they haven't, had the practice of going into it. So using it as a process, but also not only focusing on one specific type of text. And then in terms of feedback, I tried to do, I don't know how you do it, and I will defer to the expert here, but I tried to have a balance of positive and constructive criticism because I like to show students what they're doing well, because I want them to keep doing it. And when we're writing or correcting writing, I've found that a lot of times people neglect that idea of saying, oh no, this part is very, very clear. This made a lot of sense. Can we try and restructure this part to be more similar to this? Or how can we rephrase that? So how do you usually try and give feedback to your students about their writing?
In general, I'd say it depends. If they're preparing for an exam, I will be a bit stricter, let's say. Yeah. But then if they're but if they're not taking an exam, they're working on general English or other goals that they may have, I always try to highlight the positives for sure. Like, oh, this is good. Keep doing that, right? So try to reproduce that next time you write something like this. This is great. This is fun. This was creative. The way you, yeah. So let me start by the beginning. I always, hands down, pencils down, pens down, mouse down. I don't do anything. I just sit still and I read the whole text first, and then I write a comment reacting to the content. Maybe it's a story, maybe it's their opinion, maybe it's whatever it may be. I try to react to it, maybe about the content, maybe they shared something personal. I try to comment on that, or maybe they have presented ideas in an interesting or fun way, for instance. I try to focus on that to make it more personal. And then I will focus on things like organization, of course, language, and the way they have presented the ideas, and if they have fulfilled the communicative purpose of that text, be it a comment, a review, a review on Amazon, for example, it might be something more real life, right? And then I will also point out a few mistakes that I know that they would be able to correct by themselves by asking a few questions, like maybe you can change the preposition here, or check subject-verb agreement here, maybe there could be a comma here, things like that. When I believe they're not ready yet to correct that mistake by themselves, then I just highlight it. And then if I judge it appropriate, because sometimes they're not there yet, and it's fine, and maybe it's not the focus I want to give for that particular piece, so that kind of feedback, so I may not worry about it. Or if I judge it as important, I will then correct it myself and present them with the correct version.
Okay, so you do kind of select what you want to include and what you don't. Because that's one thing. Yeah, it can be overwhelming, especially when they get things back. It's just so much to look at, because if there's positives and negatives and things and corrections, so it can be quite overwhelming. And another question that I had was, do you typically work with the students and go through the rubric on what you're going to be grading them on? Not grading them, or but assessing them on, and kind of talk about those details and where your focus is? Is that something you do prior to them in the writing process?
Yeah. There's usually some sort of activity in which they become familiar with what is expected of them, like a matching activity. Oh, language, so this is what I'll be looking for, you know, sometimes in the form of questions. We focus a lot on the target reader. So we try to imagine the ideal reader for that piece, and then imagine if that person would be happy with the information in terms of, oh, okay, I've learned what I needed to learn from this, or I got the information I needed. So I usually work on that prior to assigning a writing task. And then I oftentimes, especially because I mostly teach one-to-one classes, I have the chance to, in class, sometimes give them time to look at the feedback if they haven't done it yet. And then we can go through it together. And then I also sometimes will select a few things that I choose to comment with them live, you know, during the class, so we can work on it together, and then we do it like this.
Okay. I do have another question from Instagram. I had lots of questions here. What kind of materials, authentic or not, can I use to help a student improve her copywriting skills? This is very specific, though. So we have a copywriter student here.
Yeah, I'm not a copywriter. I don't think I know any copywriter, so I wouldn't know how to point you in the right direction. But if I were in this position of having a student who would like to improve their copywriting skills, and if they didn't want to find a specific course, because there are a lot of copywriting
That's
courses
what I was going to say. I would
Yeah.
almost defer them to like a Udemy or Coursera or something like that, where they could,
exactly.
you know, take a look there.
Me too. I would recommend them there, first of all, but it maybe if that wasn't their choice, or if they needed some extra support, I would try and then go online and try to read a bunch of text about that, and try to learn about it, you know, see examples of that and try to notice. I happen to follow a couple of people on Instagram that talk about it, so that's also possible. Still, I think it's quite a challenge for you to do it for one particular student. You know, if you don't know that yet, that might be quite hard, but it may be a way to go about it.
Yeah, I think that I had a question the other day. It was floating around the business English groups. It was about someone preparing for a CFA certification. It's like an international financial advisor certification. And we looked into it, a few of us did, and we found some of the preparatory work for it. I mean, there's one of the 3 levels had 4,000 pages of formulas and things like that. And so we looked at it and we said, listen, this is not something that we're able to prepare you, because it's very, very technical. It's super, super specific, but also probably you would benefit most from going to a center that has a preparatory course specifically for that. So knowing kind of your boundaries and being able to prepare students for both ESP type of things, but also writing, because if you're unfamiliar, sometimes we can give the wrong wrong advice. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's not something I would do.
Yeah, I would maybe say hands off on that one as well. Yeah. Okay. Any other advice that you can give for teachers in regards to writing?
Oh, tons. Oh.
Okay, top tips from Leandro.
Yeah, let me have a look at the questions. Okay, there was a question about time management as well, which is something that many people struggle with, especially under exam conditions. So in our courses, Gabi and I, we try to make sure that they will plan, because many students are reluctant to dedicating enough time to planning their texts. So we always have 1 or 2 lessons that we dedicate exclusively to that. So they will read about different ways of generating ideas, of creating an outline. We usually ask them to create a couple of outlines and bring to class so that we can discuss. And then they will know we make it clear to them that we expect them to do that for every single text that they write. So when we tell them that we expect them to spend about 20 minutes planning when they have only 45 minutes to write, they're like, oh my gosh, are you crazy? How am I supposed to spend half of the time I have only on planning, you know? But then we explain and we try to show them that if you have a good plan, chances are that when you actually start writing, it'll be much easier, because you'll have all the ideas and some of the language already, all the structure. It'll be much easier. Yeah. And this usually helps a lot when it comes to time management. And then, of course, practice a lot under exam conditions. Yeah. And this is something that perhaps many teachers may be reluctant to do, which is allow students to write in class, precisely because it's such a time-consuming activity. Then we often assign it as homework. But then if a student struggles with writing, then they have the opportunity to have access to you, immediately, and ask for help, and you can kind of monitor what they're doing, how they're going about it, and give some suggestions. They'll feel much more supported, and then slowly but surely they can then become more independent. So that's a very important idea. I think we need to get used
even
to.
when you're doing it in class, it seems more real than if you're doing it at home and just timing yourself, right? Mm-hmm. It does simulate a little bit more of a testing condition for students. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Any others? I went through all my questions that I got. What else did you get?
Okay. Let me see. Yeah, feedback. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Then some book recommendations, for example. I think for teachers, I do have a small pile here that I've selected so that I don't forget any. I would start with this one by Jeremy Harmer, How to Teach Writing. I think this is a great starting point for many teachers who want to understand a little bit more about the skill and how you can work with students on how to improve their writing skills, get used to the process, how to give feedback, some very practical ideas of what to do, what to focus on beyond language as well, right? And then there's one of my favorites is this one, which is called Simply Writing by Tricia Hedge, publishers Oxford. And it's not only a collection of extremely practical activities you can do in class for all levels, from beginner to advanced, but also each section of the book has the author makes an introduction explaining all the rationale behind the activities. So I did learn a lot about, the theory behind writing by reading this one, which I highly recommend. So
that's always good to have too, right? Because sometimes we don't know why we're doing something. So it's nice to have that kind of that vision of why am I doing this process? Why am I going through it this way? So it's nice to
and then it may be easier for you to adapt sometimes, or then later on start creating your own lessons and activities based on the concepts that you learn there. So yeah. These are two top ones that I would recommend.
Excellent. Sure. Any other questions that you had?
Let's see.
I think that, oh my gosh, we went through feedback, we went through exam prep, we went through a lot of stuff, I think.
Yeah.
I've got all my questions answered.
Yeah. Me too.
Okay, great. Well, I want to thank you so much for sitting with me this afternoon, because I think it's been really informative, and I think that a lot of people will will benefit from understanding kind of your perspective on it and going through the writing process. And you have Instagram too, right? So where can people follow you at?
Yes, people can follow me at Leandro Zuanazzi, just like that, on Instagram. And then I'd also like to thank you so much for the invitation. It's been a pleasure. And I'd also like to invite anyone who wants to keep the conversation going, maybe other questions come up that we haven't covered here, get in touch with us, and I'd be more than happy to keep the conversation going.
I think writing is always challenging for teachers, and teachers avoid it. So if we can kind of help that process along, then that's great too. And could you just let us know about you and Gabi have the writing courses? So please let the listeners know.
All right. So at the moment, we're offering a course on writing for C1 Advanced. So Cambridge exam, very specific. It's a short course in which we focus on all the genres and on the writing process as well. We help you with generating ideas, planning, organizing, writing, editing. We give you feedback. We encourage you to write other drafts if we feel like it might be a good idea. And we have lots of very insightful discussions in class, because participants, they often come with their views on writing, their experiences, and it's always so enriching. So we highly recommend that. If you want more information, you can check out my Instagram, send me a message. Later on this semester in September, we're going to offer the Writing for C2 Proficiency course, which is the same type of format, but then focusing on the C2 level exam, in which we do pretty much the same thing as appropriate to the level. And we're also offering a course on writing skills for academic English. So if that's your preference, that's your goal, we're also offering this course. You can find more information on my page, and let me know.
No, it's good for anybody who's interested in doing. I know a lot of teachers are looking towards those proficiency exams. So Leandro and Gabi are great. We'll have to have you and Gabi come back so you can chat with both of us, with everybody together. And if you're interested in doing courses like CELTA, Delta, or any of those teacher certifications, the academic writing courses are very helpful to prepare people for that, right?
For sure. Absolutely. We don't always get the chance to write like that, in a more academic style. So a course can be highly beneficial for sure.
Specifically for like Delta and like those types of things where you have to write the background essay, it's good to kind of do a little refresh beforehand. So okay, excellent. Well, thank you very much again. It was a pleasure chatting with you, and stay tuned, everybody. We'll have more people on, and if you want Leandro back again, I'm sure we can arrange you and Gabi to have a chat.
No doubt about it.
Okay, that's it for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Ready to join the conversation? Head on over to Instagram at Real Talk and ELT Pod, or at Kelly Pennington ELT, and send me a message. That's it for me. Take care of yourself, your health, your vibe, and your tribe. Until next time.